Hey everyone, here's an example from section 2.2. This is just one of the standard beginning examples where we have a graph and they're going to ask us to find the limits as x approaches different numbers. So as you can see here, we've got a graph. This is definitely a piecewise function just because you can see the jump discontinuity here. So this is definitely a piecewise function, and what they're going to ask us in the first part is, what is the limit of g of x? So this function's g as x approaches -4. So if you look as x approaches -4, all right, so as we get closer, if we follow this function up and we get closer and closer and closer to -4, you can see that x, or that the y value there, so limit as x approaches -4, is actually going to be, so that limit would be y equals 0. Okay, so the limit as x approaches -4 is actually y equal to 0. Okay, what's the limit as x approaches -1? So as x approaches -1, so if we follow this and we get closer and closer to -1, you can see that right there at -1, where x is -1, our limit would be -1, so y equal -1. And then as you follow along, it says, okay, what's the limit as x approaches 0? So as x approaches 0, what's the limit? Well, as we approach 0, we get to this point right here, and we would want to say that the limit as x approaches 0, I mean, part of us, you really are tempted at least to say that the limit as x approaches 0 would be y is -1. But up here, the limit would tell you that as you're approaching 0, that the y would be 1. So really what you want to write is y equals -1 and y equals 1, but you can't have both of these, right? They're not going to the same number. So that means the limit does not exist. Because they're not going to the same number, right? We have a jump discontinuity is what that's called. So we'll cross that out. And then finally it says, what's the limit as x approaches -0.7? So if we look here and we go to, there's -1, so -0.7 is right in here. So that's -0.7. What would be the limit there? Well, the y value there is also going to be -1 because that's a flat line there. So limit as x approaches -0.7, that's y equals -1. So really in all this, if you have a continuous function and a continuous function goes through some point that you have on this line, and they ask you for a limit along this point, you can find a limit. But anytime you have a jump discontinuity with a piecewise function, there's definitely not going to be a limit there. Okay.